My name is Kathy, too, and I usually co-host the show with my very good best friend, Tobin Lowe, but he couldn't make it because he has an actual show to make, which is our show. And so we brought JP Brammer, advice columnist. How would you describe your job?
Yeah, I had nothing to do, so I'm here.
Oh, okay. Thanks,
Very
JP.
excited. I'm an advice columnist. I run the column called Hola Papi, which I kid you not started on Grindr. Grindr used to own straight people. Do we know what Grindr is? Grindr is sort of like the gay hookup app, and they used to have an editorial outlet called Into, which is where my column was proliferated. So I field questions from LGBT people from all over the world, currently running it out magazine.
So if you don't listen to Nancy, which totally fine if you don't, we are a narrative show featuring queer voices, telling queer stories. We typically weave a bunch of different interviews together and we sound design it, so it's generally a fun listen, though people do say it makes them cry a lot, which I don't understand. But like stories we feature on the show include like writing love poems to your crush, why we love Golden Girls. My co-host Tobin tried wearing heels for the first time to get more in touch with his femininity, and his calves ended up hurting a lot.
But I bet they look great.
They did look great, yeah. Why Dumbledore isn't actually gay, despite what J.K. Rowling says. And we've had people like Lena Waithe and Rufus Wainwright on the show to talk to us about, I think Rufus talked about how he met B. Arthur and how rude she was to him. But it was great. It was great. And we try our best to feature queer folks who are trying to figure out their identity, and not just people who are either super confident or have no idea what's going on. I mean, we do that too. But for the most part, it's the in-between, which is where Tobin and I tend to hang out in. And because our show's been out for like just over 2 years now, we have heard from a lot of people have written in, queer people, straight people, asking for advice. And we say this all the time, that we are not experts, and yet they keep writing in with advice, with questions that they need advice on. We don't know what to do, so this is where JP comes in.
Yeah.
You've got lots to say.
Yes, because I really think we're living in a sort of advice column renaissance where people are sort of turning to alternative forms of media, looking for a more relatable person to tell them how to live, despite my various protests saying, no, I actually don't know anything. One of my recent examples is someone sent me a letter saying, hey, I think my manager is on Grindr and has a wife and he's married. Should I tell the wife? And my one-line response was, no, mind your business. And then the rest of the column was just 5,000-word interview with a bee expert who sort of was like, hey, are the bees dying? And she kind of said, yeah, but it's complicated. And we just went into this like really long conversation about like the future of bees.
Yeah.
And it ended on this wonderful line of like, and mind your own beeswax, kids. But like, I didn't plan that.
Brought it back. Yeah.
I did not plan that.
It was great.
But yeah, it's been really interesting sort of fielding questions from like the global LGBTQ community and how technology has sort of facilitated that happening, because it's like, I never imagined having to field questions from people in India, you know? Like, I'm just like some Mexican homosexual in a Starbucks in Brooklyn. I don't know how like you can navigate your culture and if it's safe to come out. But people ask me these sort of things, and so it's been challenging but very rewarding.
What qualifications do you have?
None.
At all?
So, okay, I am gay.
Great.
I have lived my entire life as a gay man. I am from rural Oklahoma, kind of went through all the trials and tribulations of dating people who were in the closet, not wanting to come out myself. There's a lot of universality in the specific, I find. I'm sure like Nancy's the same way, right? You can sort of hone your intentions down on one little thing that happened to you, and you can put as much detail into it as possible, and I found that people still say, oh, I relate to that. Even straight people, like when I talk about, you know, dating someone who was in the closet. I dated my best friend from high school for like 3 years, and neither of us could tell the other one that we were gay because we didn't want to put a name on our relationship because that would sort of ruin the whole thing, right? I've written about that in my advice column, and I had a few straight people be like, I know this is a really specific situation to you, but I found myself sort of understanding what it's like to feel like you're the second choice for someone, to sort of feel like you can't be open about your intentions, that there's something in the dynamic where you can't name the thing. And so I really find that like the more specific you get, and the more open and vulnerable you are with your experiences, the more people from all walks of life will be able to relate to it.
So anybody can do advice.
I think so. Like, anyone can do advice. Not everyone should, but everyone can. Because I think we're living sort of in a time of like where the expert is in high abundance. Everyone who has an internet connection is an expert in something,
That's
right?
true.
You like have Wi-Fi and something just happened geopolitically, like Notre Dame is burning or whatever, and you are ready to go off. You know everything there is to know about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of a scary thing, but it also, in a way, has paved the way for, I think, people like us to have careers in the first place, right?
That's
like,
true. Thank you.
I mean, trust me, I know the history of advice columns. I've read
Tell
about
us the
it.
history.
So in ye olden days, in like Victorian times, people who were advice columnists were the learned people. They were the people who had those scarce few like college-level educations. And so people would ask in with very practical questions. They would say, hey, how did the wind work? Like, how does weather happen?
Oh, wow.
Why does the sun come up from this side, not that side? Very, very basic things. It was called the Athenian Society who answered these things. And so that grand tradition of learned, sage people giving advice has trickled on down to me, where I give advice that's like, hola, papi, I had a fisting accident yesterday. What do I do? And it's all part of the same legacy, which is wild.
Is it?
Of like... Yes, I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
But it's just interesting. We're like, you know, as a Mexican American, as a gay person, historically advice column, it started out with just very educated, very rich white men. Then it sort of became the purview of white women, right? Because it was sort of like, oh, women want to take care of people. They want to nurture people. They want to like answer and field your questions, the agony aunt or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It was this sort of like sexist notion of, women are the caretakers, therefore the question should go to them, and they'll like handle it with care, and they'll handle it with feeling and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
There are very few male advice columnists. There are very few advice columnists of color, and I think that is only possible through this like democratization of the field through the internet. So there's good and bad, right? Like I, an idiot, can now log on and be like, hey, here's how I think you should live your life, and there's good and bad with that.
Not an idiot.
Oh, thank you.
That would really make the show real weird. Anyways, what questions do you get asked the most?
Ooh, it's mostly by teen girls in high school wondering if it's okay for them to be part of the LGBT community. Like, they feel bad about identifying with it because they're like, am I gay enough? Am I bi enough? Am I expressing myself in a queer enough way to sort of align myself with this broader identity? Which I totally get. We live in like a time where everyone feels super alienated from community. And everyone feels sort of like this trepidation to engage where, I mean, I get questions from straight people all the time that's like, hey, I want to be a better ally. Hey, I want to like support LGBT people better, but I don't know how without stepping on toes. And I think those two things are part of the same spirit where it's just sort of like, how do we move through the world in a time where it really feels like everyone's fighting and no one gets along and every little thing is like a landmine waiting to blow up, right?
Right, or like you have applied a label to yourself. We got to figure out what camps we're in.
Exactly.
And maybe they're not supposed to mix.
Yeah, and identity, you know, it's become like this, not become, it's kind of always been this very static thing where it's like there's not a whole lot of room for nuance. It's sort of like you are this thing or you are this thing and that's it. But I feel really bad about that because, you know, I want to tell straight people when they write into me, it's like, it's not that I think heterosexuality is this crude, sort of simplistic thing that has no nuances and no complications to it, whereas like queer identity has all this stuff going on that they couldn't possibly understand. Everyone who has a sexuality has that sort of like deeply complicated psychological terrain going on, where there are things that they don't fully understand, that they encounter things that maybe make them second guess themselves, things that make them feel uncomfortable in their identity. And I really think that when I'm writing about queer issues, I'm also writing about straight people. I'm also writing about the world that has sort of been shaped by a cisgender heterosexual kind of society. It's all the same commentary. There's no boundaries between it. And I wish we could all just be that flexible and fluid with information.
So we're gonna like move on to some questions that you've received.
I'm excited.
And we're gonna answer them. But before that, if you got any question you have for JP, write it down, pass it to the side, and you're gonna have to answer it.
And the great tradition of my advice column is that you have to say "Hola, papi" at the beginning. You don't have to here, obviously. This is like a different setting. Like if you don't want to call me papi, that's fine. I'll get over it. But just so you know.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, the first piece of advice I think you need to give out to the world is the one that you were just talking about, which I hear a lot from straight folks also via email and social media, is how do I be a better person for the queer community?
Yeah, so I get put on a lot of like diversity panels to sort of talk about this, and it always just sort of feels like I'm always preaching to the choir, right? It's sort of like, if you're coming to me, a straight person, and you're saying, how can I be a better straight person? There's very little I have to like offer you in terms of like, oh, here's how you could do even better. I really feel like I'm usually talking to people who already have an inkling of how to be a better person, and they're waiting for that little push for me to be like, no, it's okay. We're not going to like ostracize you from the community forever for asking questions or whatever. But I really do think it is sort of about being able to see yourself in people who aren't like you, and having that act of seeing yourself in them not supersede the fact that they are still this other person with their own needs, their own experience, things that maybe you don't understand. So it's sort of like empathy that doesn't take the driver's seat, right? Because I think right now, for example, I see a lot of this online. I'm a Latino person from a Mexican-American family. And so when the border crisis started happening and like the detention centers were really like front and center in the news, I had this kind of complicated feeling where I was like, does this have anything to do with me? You know, my family's from Mexico. They're very poor. I have people who are undocumented in my family. And I thought, yes, all that is true, but that is my narrative, and it's not a prerequisite for sort of being like, this is wrong, and there are ways for me to help. I don't think you need to be Latino. I don't think you need to have undocumented people in your family. Like, I am a very relatively privileged person when it comes to like other people in my community, and sort of taking all that into account and recognizing, no, but I can still help. I think that's important.
And then is anybody ever just like, wait, just give me the steps. What do I need to do?
The exact steps.
Yeah.
No, they do that a lot too. And I think it sort of speaks to how hard it can be to do like intra-community communication, right?
Yeah.
Because people are afraid, and I understand why. I can't even lie. But you got to put up with that if you want to do the right thing, I think.
All right, let's go on to letter number 2. It says, Hola Poppy, it's a tale as old as Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm in lust with my best friend. I used to think it was love, but I'm glad to say I've matured enough to realize I've never truly been in love or even know what it is. This is sad. I first met my gay best friend 8 years ago. 4 months into hanging, I told him I'd like to see where things went, and he turned me down. We drifted for a bit, but reunited 2 months later when he mentioned he had a boyfriend. As it happened, we all became very close within months, maybe a little too close. Eventually, that boyfriend moved away, and my gay best friend called me his replacement boyfriend, jokingly, to our roommates. Obviously, I caught feelings again and confessed my love again, and turned down again, and remained friends, but we no longer use each other as pillows. 2 years later, we're still roommates, but just the two of us. He's found another serious boyfriend, and we all get along even better than the first boyfriend. It's slowly reaching human pillow territory again. Poppy, how do I keep myself from being their all too comfortable third wheel and realize the potential men around me I keep ignoring? Sincerely, Mr. But What About Me?
You know what? I've encountered a lot of this in my life where there are people out there, and I think it's the majority of people, who might be well-intentioned. They're not bad people. But as human beings, most people are sort of always seeking that like most comfortable, most convenient situation for their lives. They want like to have their boyfriend, but then they want to have the human pillow, as he said it. They want to have everything at once. And if no one's there to say that's not okay, or if you're not there to say like, no, actually, I don't want to accommodate this, they'll just do it. And there are times in life where you do have to be firm in yourself and say, I recognize that this isn't working for me. This isn't feeling good. You have to sort of put it out there that like, I think this dynamic is unhealthy, and we need to figure something else out, or we need to take some time apart, because I really struggled with that. I mean, we've bonded over this, right?
Yes.
Where like, it's hard for me as a person with anxiety to sort of voice what I need in this world. Where it's like, in the workplace especially, I'm always just like, if I ask for a day off, are you gonna fire me? If I ask for a raise, even though I think I deserve one, are you gonna be mad at me?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to move through life like that, but you have to find that place inside of you that is strong and that can be firm and put it out there. What do you think?
I've just been in that position so many times with my very intense female friendships growing up that I never want to think about it again. So we're good. All right.
We're good on that, okay. Too traumatic, I understand. All right.
Very traumatic.
Yes.
Oh, my best friends I was in love with. Just didn't know you were. I wasn't out, so didn't know. Okay.
Mood.
Next letter. Hola, Papi. My boyfriend of 4 years, and I have decided to try an open relationship. I was deep in the closet for most of my life and came out under bad circumstances, and I've been in long relationships ever since. The hookup world has given my head a whirl. Recently, I had my first experience inviting someone over from the app. Grindr?
Must be.
Okay. Something I wasn't counting on was that I ended up liking this person genuinely. We talked for a long time and have continued texting back and forth, talking about meeting up and hanging out again soon. My boyfriend is extremely lovely and open-minded, and I'm so thankful to have him, but this other guy has been taking up space in my mind. Do you think I have crossed some boundary that shouldn't have been crossed? Did I do open relationships wrong? Is every hookup going to drive me crazy like this? Thank you. Open and anxious. This is my worst nightmare.
Is it?
Yeah.
Why is it your worst?
Every time I'm like, maybe.
Oh,
this.
maybe open up the relationship.
Yeah.
Sort of like, yeah. It's scary, right? Because, I mean, okay, so my third eye is about to open here. I really think that between any two people, there's this sort of like living, breathing contract of like what is acceptable and what is not. And sort of figuring that out and what's correct for your dynamic and what your needs is super important. That's like what a relationship is. It's an ongoing conversation. And so what's right for one couple may not be right for another. And I think right here, there's been no communication in terms of like what's okay and what's not okay. This person is confused. They don't know, they don't even know if they've crossed a boundary, right?
I see.
I think before you start stepping over those things, you need to start having conversations with your partner or partners.
But what if you don't know that something like this can happen?
Yeah, I think that's the tough thing. It's just like, this person's in a position now to have that discussion because they have sort of like entered scary territory. But I'm always like super hesitant to sort of tell people what their relationship should look like.
Yeah.
I mean, the sad truth about being an advice columnist is that like 75% of the time, you're just dressing up, communicate more in fancy ways. It's just like, because no one wants to talk to each other. No one wants to be open with each other about like what's going on. They're afraid of how other people will react. And it always requires more communication, not less.
How often are people just asking for permission to do something?
Oh, more than half the time. Most people already, here's the thing. People who write into an advice column are a specific personality when you think about it, right? Because it's like, you're trusting this human being on the internet who you don't know that well with an intimate problem you have, knowing that it's going to get put up on the internet and that you will possibly be flagellated. Like, sure, it's anonymous, but like, that wouldn't matter to me, right? Like, I would know that's my question. I would be like, I would feel scolded if it was in any way negative. I think that the people who read advice columns and the people who write into advice columns are different camps. And they're very different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most of the time it is someone who sees me as a nebulous authority figure who can be like, can you please just tell me it's okay for me to call myself bisexual because I think that's what I am. Most people are looking for permission. And isn't that life, kind of?
Oh my God, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. All
People
right.
already know what they want. They just want you to tell them, yes, you have it, fine.
Okay, here's the last one before. Oh, we have 2 minutes. Maybe do we skip that one and just go to this?
Skip it. It's be bad.
Okay, here I go. It says, Hola, Papi. I went out with my stepmom, and she asked my friend if she was a lesbian. I want to explain to her that that's antiquated. How do I do that?
I would say that. You're like, Mom, that's antiquated. I guess that is a thing that happens in the wild, huh? Like,
yeah.
I sometimes forget there are straight people. Like, I see so few of them that, like, I just, like, forget that questions like that can happen.
Oh,
He's like,
right, yeah.
Is that a macro or microaggression? I don't know.
I don't know.
It reminds me of this time. So I was at Grindr HQ. My column was sort of like starting to take off for the first time, and we were having this like really fancy lunch to discuss what the future of it would be. And this woman leans over and she sort of asks me, and she's like, "Now, where are you from that you have a name like Poppy?" And I was like,
No.
"Excuse me?" And she was like, "Why would your parents name you that?" And I was like, "Oh no."
No.
Oh no, this is happening. And so like, my nature, on the internet, I can be sort of like fire and brimstone, but in person, I'm very like reluctant to have conflict. And so I wanted to gently sort of like, out of a feeling of mutual embarrassment, sort of steer the conversation elsewhere. So I was like, sometimes we call each other that.
That was nice.
Yeah, I'm ashamed of how I handled that to this day. I think that's why it haunts me. But you know, things like that happen, and you just have to like wince and just keep moving through your life and let it haunt your dreams at night sometimes.
God. Okay.
Yep.
Does anybody else have a question for this guy? He'll be
I'm
on
so sorry.
Do you have any parting words?
Parting words.
You have a minute left. Go.
You know, we
Go.
were originally, when we were discussing what we wanted to talk about, like the best advice that we've ever received in life.
Oh, right.
And to this day, I said this on your show too. So I was new to my middle school in my very tiny Yeehaw, USA town in Oklahoma, where I was going to my very first homecoming dance. And I was a really big kid, and I was really afraid to get out there and like have other people see me, and I didn't want to dance. And I told my mom that on the way over there. I was like, Mom, I just like don't want to dance. And without even turning over to me, she said, ain't nobody looking at you. But I really do hold that because, like, some people will look at you, but that doesn't mean they're seeing you.
Right.
Like, we have these, like, moments in life. Like, I'm sure at the dance, when I did dance, some people were looking at me like, oh, that fat kid's dancing or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a moment that happened. That was someone's judgment that they had. But that was very much happening in their interior. It had a lot more to do with their biases, like, who they were as a person. And so, yeah, there were people looking at me, but you need to be able to differentiate that from people who actually see you. And you need to sort of live for the people who see you, right? Like, you should dance. Who cares? You should get out there and have a good time. And if you feel a little embarrassed, that's okay too. You let that pass.
I so wish we had a clip of I Hope You Dance right now.
My next memoir, I hope you... yeah, no.
Okay, that is our time. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us chat about Vice.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.